Whence the Whisper Comes. Chapter 5. In Plain Sight. The afternoon sun was already fading, painting Eldermire in shades of grim gold and melancholy gray when I finally stepped back into the inn. My footsteps echoed softly across the worn floorboards, the lobby's shadows stretching out to welcome me home, though home was hardly the word I'd choose. My room door creaked open, revealing the corkboard exactly as I had left it, a chaotic constellation of notes, photographs, and questions tied together by scarlet threads. With a quiet sigh, I shrugged off my coat, hanging it carefully beside the door, and approached the tangled web of evidence. Taking a fresh pen from the small box on the desk, I fastened a new slip of paper. Lily Caldwell, missing 5 days now. It's been 2 days since my arrival. My eyes roved slowly over the corkboard, tracing each connection. The stuffed rabbit, the mutilated carcass in the woods, bloodlessly butchered beneath an effigy swinging gently in the breeze. The attic of the library filled with a child's fortress and scribbled horrors. I pinned another note, written hastily. Abigail Carter knows more than she's saying. Is she protecting someone? The image of the two men at the diner surfaced again, their whispered conversation replaying with fresh urgency. Preparations are almost complete, they'd said. And something else that clung stubbornly to my memory, their words like ashes on my tongue. The girl was only the beginning. I pinned a rough sketch of the men to the board, underlying the cryptic warning twice. Beside it, I wrote another thought. Another person, accomplice or victim, he'll be where he's supposed to be. My gaze settled on a faded photograph of the shack, almost innocuous between the shadow of twisted branches. But the trapdoor beneath had opened onto something darker than any mere secret, a subterranean chamber ripe with the stench of ritual sacrifice. Police among the robed figures, chanting voices, the flayed body laid reverently upon the altar. My skin crawled at the memory. A fresh note joined the other, its edges trembling slightly as I pushed the pen home. Eldermire authorities compromised. Ritualistic killings? Cult activity. Taking a step back, I studied the chaotic tapestry before me, heart heavy with the weight of unanswered questions. Eldermire's secrets ran deeper than the roots of its oldest trees, its darkness more ancient than the stones of its neglected church. Every piece of evidence seemed to point in a different direction, yet all led inexorably to the same place. The same sinister truth I still couldn't quite touch. My fingers drifted unconsciously to the cigarette pack in my pocket. I lit one, the match flaring briefly, its glow illuminating the puzzle's grim tableau. Smoke curled lazily around me as I leaned against the desk, eyes distant, mind turning relentlessly. A thought surfaced, clear and sharp as shattered glass. The man with the limp. He'd nearly seen me outside the shack, his gaze piercing even from a distance as if he knew exactly where shadows liked to hide. Maybe it was time I paid him a visit. I crushed the cigarette into the ashtray, decision hardening in my chest. Pulling on my coat once more, I took one last glance at the corkboard, its red threads gleaming faintly like veins in the dimming room. Darkness was gathering. Secrets whispered louder with each passing hour, and if Lily Caldwell was still out there, if she was still alive, I was running out of time. Twilight deepened into dusk as I stepped out of the Eldermire Inn, the sky bruising dark purple above. Stars reluctantly peeking through as though wary of what they'd see. My breath fogged lightly in the chill evening air, mingling with the wisps of cigarette smoke that drifted lazily upward. I'd hoped instinct would guide me toward the man with the limp, but Eldermire was the sort of town where instincts got you lost, hurt, or worse. Asking around was a gamble I wasn't prepared to take, not yet. In a town as tangled as this, even the simplest questions might echo back whispers I'd regret. So I'd let the man find me, in his own time, and there were few better places to wait for trouble than a pub. I began walking toward the lights of Main Street, shadows stretching long ahead of me, feeling heavier with each step. An uneasy itch prickled the base of my skull. I paused, glancing back over my shoulder toward the inn. Nothing but dim windows and the quiet flicker of the vacancy sign. Yet the feeling persisted, someone watching, hidden from sight. I narrowed my eyes, scanning the empty street carefully. Nothing moved, no figure waiting in the darkness, but experience had taught me the value of intuition. If it felt like eyes were on me, chances were good they were. I returned to the door of my motel room, checking the lock again with careful deliberation. The knob refused to budge, it held firm. But paranoia ran deep these days, and the weight of Eldermire's hidden gaze was enough to set my nerves on edge. Pausing a moment, I reached into my pocket and tore a small piece from my notepad. With a quick glance around to be sure I wasn't observed, I folded the scrap of paper and tucked it gently into the narrow crack between the door and the jamb, leaving it poised to drop if disturbed. It wasn't foolproof, but it was enough. Satisfied, or at least as close as I'd get, I turned again and headed down the cracked pavement toward the warm glow of Eldermire's solitary pub, the Crooked Nail. The name alone spoke volumes, a place of broken things and uneasy truths, the perfect haunt for those who preferred shadows to company. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with smoke, murmured conversations, and suspicion. Patrons hunched quietly over glasses of cheap whiskey and watered-down beer, their faces half-lit by flickering lamps, features hidden beneath brims of hats and veils of cigarette haze. The bartender, a wiry man with a thin mustache, gave me a wary nod as I approached. "Bourbon," I murmured, placing a bill on the scarred wood of the bar. Without comment, he poured my drink and slid it toward me, eyes flickering briefly to mine, then away. I took the glass, weaving carefully past tables and chairs until I reached a darkened corner near the back, obscured from casual glances, but with a clear line of sight to the entrance. Settling down, I felt the whiskey burn pleasantly in my chest. The corner offered solitude, but I wasn't fool enough to relax. The sensation of being watched had never fully left, still crawling softly beneath my skin. I took another careful sip, eyes fixed on the door. Now all there was to do was wait, for answers, for danger, or for whatever else Eldermire had lurking just beyond the shadows. It wasn't until 9 when my quarry finally wandered in. The pub had grown steadily busier, the atmosphere thickening until the air itself felt heavy and watchful. I'd just risen from my shadowed corner to fetch another bourbon when the door swung open, letting in a brief gust of night air, and 4 familiar figures. At the head was the man with the limp, his slow, careful steps accompanied by the mute rhythm of his cane. Just behind him was the man from the diner, the gravel-voiced companion whose whisper still echoed ominously in my mind. They paused briefly at the entrance, eyes scanning the dimly lit interior. Then their gazes settled on me. For one tense second, our eyes met, surprise flashing briefly across their faces. They exchanged quick glances before quietly moving to an empty table near the back, deliberately looking anywhere but at me. Something about their casual indifference felt too studied, too controlled. I cursed softly under my breath. My advantage was gone. There was no way I could remain here unnoticed, watching and waiting. They spotted me now. Whatever element of surprise I'd hoped for had vanished the instant our eyes had met. "Never mind," I muttered to the bartender, nodding toward the half-filled glass he'd begun pouring. As I slid my money back into my coat, something behind the bar caught my attention. A pale shape tucked among bottles of amber whiskey, shadowed and partly obscured. Another porcelain mask. My pulse quickened subtly, though I kept my face carefully neutral. Eldermire was full of secrets, and it seemed the masks were everywhere, silent witnesses tucked in every corner. The bartender must have had a kid involved in the same art project, or at least that's what logic wanted me to believe, but logic felt increasingly inadequate in this place. I said nothing about it, merely tipping my hat slightly as I left the bar, stepping into the chill embrace of the night once more. Outside, the air bit sharp with the scent of wood smoke and distant decay. I found a nearby alleyway, its shadows deep enough to shield me from view. Leaning against the cold brick wall, I lit another cigarette, the flames flickering orange in the darkness. The glowing tip smoldered softly, casting faint illumination over my watchful eyes. All I could do now was wait, and hoped the shadows stayed friendly long enough for answers to emerge. Minutes blurred into hours as I waited, cigarette after cigarette burning down to bitter stubs beneath the cold gleam of street lamps. Just past 11:30, the door of the Crooked Nail swung open again, spilling a pool of dim light onto the sidewalk. The man with the limp stumbled out alone, his gait now noticeably looser, swaying slightly as he made his uneven way down the empty street. I ground out my cigarette, stepping from the alley's shadows and trailing quietly behind. The moon was little more than a ghostly crescent, offering just enough light to follow without drawing attention. The man led me through winding streets, past houses whose windows watched like suspicious eyes, curtains drawn tight against unseen nightmares. Eventually, he turned down a quiet lane where houses stood older, neglected, and forgotten. His own home was a ramshackle affair with peeling paint and a yard choked by weeds. He fumbled with his keys, cursing softly, until finally he vanished inside, the door creaking shut behind him. I waited in the darkness, listening to the quiet settling over Eldermire once more. Minutes ticked by slow. Finally satisfied, I crept forward, stepping carefully around loose gravel and onto his sagging porch. Peering cautiously through the grime-streaked window, I caught sight of him, slumped on the threadbare couch, head tipped back, eyes closed, mouth open in drunken sleep. This was my chance, perhaps the only one I'd get. I slipped my picks from my coat, feeling the subtle give of the lock moments later. The door swung inward silently, admitting me into stale air heavy with the scent of whiskey and neglect. I moved cautiously, glancing at the figure snoring softly on the couch, and stepped quietly toward the study. Inside, the walls were lined with faded photographs and books gathering dust. But my eyes caught something else. Another porcelain mask. Smooth, pale, and impassive, hanging prominently as if watching over the room. A chill whispered down my spine as I scanned my memory for what I'd already seen in this house. No children's toys, no family portraits, no sign whatsoever of anyone else living here. So why the mask? Unease tightened in my gut as I quietly left the study and moved upstairs, each step creaking subtly underfoot. I reached the bathroom door, poised to open it, when a loud pounding shattered the silence. "Open up!" came a familiar voice, sharp, impatient, authoritative. My blood went cold, the officer from the woods, the deputy I'd seen deep within the tunnels under the shack. I slipped inside the bedroom and flattened myself against the wall as the drunk downstairs startled awake with a groan. I heard him stumble from the couch, muttering curses as he fumbled with the front door latch. "Are you drunk again, Samuel?" the deputy barked angrily. "Go get your robe. It's time for tonight's sacrifice." My heart slammed in my chest. Footsteps approached rapidly, the unsteady thump of Samuel's limp growing louder as he ascended the staircase. I had seconds at most. Eyes darting wildly, I slipped into a nearby closet, pulling the door shut just as Samuel stepped onto the landing. I held my breath as his uneven gait drew closer, the click of his cane unmistakable. He paused just outside my hiding place, and my pulse hammered loudly in my ears. Then, horribly, the knob began to turn. But just as the door cracked open, the officer's impatient shout carried clearly from below. "Hurry it up, Sam!" Samuel turned his head sharply, snapping back in irritation. "Keep your damn voice down, I'm coming!" Without looking, he reached inside, fingertips brushing mere inches from my face as he grabbed a dark robe from beside me. He withdrew his hand, the door falling closed with a quiet click. Had he glanced my way, even for a second, it would have all been over. My heart thundered as I waited, unmoving, listening to Samuel limp back down the stairs. "Let's get this done," Samuel muttered bitterly from below. I exhaled shakily in the stifling darkness, knowing how close I'd come and how deeply Eldermire's secrets ran. I waited in the dark until I heard the front door close again. A few grumbled words exchanged beneath the breath of the world, footsteps fading, then silence. Still I waited. Only when I was certain they were gone did I ease open the closet door, every muscle in my body stiff with the tension of the last few minutes. The hallway was empty, the house still. Only the faint smell of spilled whiskey and old dusk lingered in the air. I crept downstairs, careful not to make a sound. The front door loomed ahead, open a crack, letting in a sliver of moonlight that spilled across the floor like a knife. I moved toward it, ready to slip back into the night and follow where the 2 men had gone. But something caught my eye, a glint of leather, a heavy tome resting quietly on the coffee table beside the couch. I hesitated. It hadn't been there when I passed through the room before, had it? Drawn by instinct, or maybe just the same foolish curiosity that always got me into trouble, I crossed the threshold and picked it up. The book was heavy, dense with age. Its binding was cracked and brittle, the pages yellowed and stiff. The cover bore no title, only a deep-pressed symbol I didn't recognize, jagged, coiling, like thorns twisted into a spiral. I opened it. The text was in a language I couldn't read, letters that didn't belong to any tongue I knew, something older, forgotten, or deliberately buried. I flipped through, page after page of tightly packed script. The ink faded to brown. Only a few pages bore illustrations, but when they did, they were vivid, grotesque, nightmarish. And then, there it was. A crude drawing tucked between glyph-covered pages, the same horned, tentacled thing I'd seen etched on the cavern walls, the same shape scrawled in crayon on the attic wall of the library. Here, it stood taller than men, arms raised as if in blessing or curse, surrounded by worshippers who bowed in a circle around it. The hair on the back of my neck bristled. I didn't know what this book was, but I knew it was important. I tucked it inside my coat, careful not to crease the fragile pages, and slipped quietly out the door. The street was empty, but in the distance I saw them, two dark shapes moving toward the edge of town, their robes fluttering like whispers in the breeze. I followed. They led me east toward the old schoolhouse, abandoned and decaying, its windows blind and broken. I crouched in the same place I had stopped on my first night, concealed behind a gnarled tree, breath held tight. They weren't alone. A group had gathered, 10, maybe 12, cloaked in black robes that swallowed the light, their heads bowed, their voices rising in a low, throaty chant that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. Their words were guttural and strange, the rhythm hypnotic, like the thrum of something ancient returning. Then another figure stepped forward, clad in white. They led a sheep, pure white, trembling, into the center of the ring. The animal's hooves tapped nervously against the stones, unsure, unsteady. The chanting grew louder, faster, like waves crashing in slow motion. And then, silence. Every voice stopped as one. I didn't hear it approach. I felt it. A pressure like the air itself recoiling in fear. From the tree line, something moved. No, not moved, crawled, slithered, shifted. It emerged slowly, its form defying logic, twisting in ways my eyes couldn't follow. Limbs, or what passed for them, dragged across the earth, bending forward and backward at once. Its skin shimmered, not with light, but with the absence of it. Blackness that seemed to suck in the whole world around it. Eyes. Too many eyes, mouths that blinked, shapes that weren't shapes at all. I couldn't comprehend it. My mind clawed at the edges of understanding, desperate for meaning where there was none. Terror gripped me, cold and absolute. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing back the scream building in my throat. The chanting echoed in my ears, now beneath my skin, like my blood was singing the words. Then, nothing. Even the sheep had gone silent. I opened my eyes, just a sliver. The clearing was empty. No people, no chanting, no sheep, no creature. The field lay still beneath the moonlight, quiet, undisturbed. Had they vanished into the shadows? Or had I gone mad? I stepped back from the tree, breath shallow, hands trembling around the stolen book hidden inside my coat. Gideon, what the hell have you gotten yourself into? And whatever it was, it wasn't human, and it wasn't finished.
In the hollow of the night, where the shadows speak in rhyme, footsteps echo through the quiet like the ticking out of time. Candles burn in broken windows, wax like tears upon the sill, and the wind repeats a name that the living never will. Smoke curls like a serpent, soft and slow beneath the moon, choking truths that no confession dares to surface all too soon. There's a prayer beneath the floorboards, there's a secret in the wall, but the silence holds its breath for something older than it all. You can run, you can hide, you can pray you're not the mark, but the doors that stay unlocked only open in the dark. So raise a glass to silence, to the tales that go unsaid, to the graves without a marker, to the letters never read. Some ghosts don't care for justice, some truths don't want